Okay, so, a small preface. I've spent many years discovering a particular way of looking at the world that I believe might just end up being a critical juncture between individual points of view and an observable truth. Let me show you what I mean. A few lessons. I think there's 8. Or 9. I think it's 8 though. Lesson 1, identity. Obviously, there's a big problem uh, in the world with a lack of, how do you put this? Not a lack of vulnerability, but a lack of inclusivity with the LGBTQ community. And I wanted to speak on that in a very honest way, right? The human experience is an extremely nuanced thing. There are many ways of being a human: good or evil, generous or stingy. Each of these extremes are characterized in every person you know, and your identity is something of a deposit for these extremes, whether that is for or against any subject of personality. The people around you influence you in their reactivities and personal foundations. The easiest way to know this is to see that you align towards or away from whatever character you deem as you. This is built into your emotional intuition. But the most definitive way of experiencing this in yourself is in our relationships, specifically in our romantic ones. When you take on a romantic relationship, the hope is that you take their identities as your own, their hopes and their dreams, their responsibilities. Unconditional love is the sincerest form of acceptance, after all. Lesson 2, ego. So I view the ego sort of as a different thing than self. You know, the id, or how's it go? The I, the id, and the ego, something like that. Um, the self is a debated region of spirituality and inherent religious practices. Sorry, quick pause there. The worship of something besides oneself is an argument of theoretics, not absolutes. And when I say the worship of self, I mean that in the sense that like you can't really define anything past your own perspective, except for things that you've chosen to take on as weight to your own character, something like that. The difference between Christianity and Satanism is on the spectrum, right? Freedom versus and defiance versus like this sort of flow towards goodness, something like that. A hypothetical mode of being made for the purpose of meaning in our lives. Though this is not the core of the ego, it is the solution. The ego itself is nothing but a function of survival, one we seemingly cannot oblige the same way we did when our evolution as creatures was much more tumultuous. As in, sort of, the whole fast food thing and, not needing to, like, work for the food and, things like that. We need our ego and we require our pain to survive. Despite this, the ego may be overridden. You have to condition yours with your own truths and meditations to deliver the ego into honesty. It has to be a rigorous, intentful thing. The ego confirms and denies without judgment, leaving truth behind to sustain your existence. This is what happens when you don't strive to take care of yourself and when you neglect your feelings. The ego is sort of like a procedural generation inside of the games we play, such as Minecraft. And I know that's maybe a bit of a jump, but I think most people understand what I mean by that. Like the way that every world is different, and the way you strive to survive in Minecraft as a sandbox survival game is to find specific things, right? But every map is different, so you have to learn to work with that sort of thing. And so, the ego, when it comes to perspective, is procedural generation inside of people, right? Okay, and then qualia and quantia. I keep bringing up these two phrases or descriptives. I know I found out that quantia is not like a real word, but for this definition, it suffices, right? Them being Greek words makes this a difficult topic to translate, though I hope this suffices, like I said. Qualia is a matter of essence, the function of an object, or concept, or even a person. Quantia is a matter of expression, the form of those previously stated, or simply put, the container and the thing contained. Now, you might ask, where does this fit into this line of thinking, or why does this matter? So I bring these concepts to light because you can find ways of utilizing them for broader pictures, a more concrete truth. You can imagine when you send someone a text, or even when you're speaking to them face to face, that you essentially package an essence into your words and messages to conjure the same images in the person's mind. In my perspective, this is a miracle. The fact that human beings invented a way to summon symbols and imagination in those around them. Obviously, nowadays this is child's play, literally. Children are capable of adapting to our world and using this invention in their own way. But when this lens is shifted to mythological conceptualization, aka religion or myth, you get the Tower of Babel, you get the flood. I would even go so far as to say that you get the waters reflecting on the deep. Right? Now, between qualia and quantia, you get a third manifestation, the manifestation of the space between. If you could imagine for a moment that in the nothingness of the void, qualia and quantia came into existence, you can visualize this as like the spiral of the yin yang, or perhaps the fractal in the Hindu conceptualization of time being cyclical, resurrection. How this affects reality can be debated, but come along with me for the sake of conversation. When our Creator invented a space for us, they made reality in a way that we cannot mesh our minds. We aren't allowed to be a hive mind, for good reason, obviously. The seasoning of life is variety, the ability to be separate by virtue of the center of attention and focus. This concept is reflected in our fates and our destinies. In things that we prioritize, and I categorize fate as the current moment and destiny as the end-all destination, right? In things that we prioritize, our strengths and our weaknesses. And maybe this is just me, but those that can use this for power are the ones in control of our modern world. The war for attention is currently a deeply criticized problem these days. We as people need to get this straight, or we will no longer be a people, we will become a single-minded giant on this planet. No better than the AI that we are afraid of, or that we are afraid will take over someday. So, speaking of technology, now this may be a turn of expectation, but hear me out. If you think about the fact that us as humans having opposable thumbs makes us the top performer in evolution at the moment, and the fact that humans have used language as a tool, you can get to a more concrete view of what I'm talking about here. I would say that humans are the kings of quantia, their ability to manipulate logic, reasoning, and resources. Though as for the qualia, humans debate this hotly. If you've ever asked yourself why, then you probably feel the same as I do here. Humans do the how very well. Fairly well. But at the end of the day, you get creations that defy logic sometimes. As I referenced in an earlier section, the war of attention is currently ongoing. I personally see technology as an analog to magic, which I will explain later on. Though technology is likely a driving force towards humanity's takeover of the planet, I believe that there are more holistic examples of tech that makes people's lives easier and better. Okay, and I just put this here because it's easy to go from what I just said to this. For the sake of clarification, try to look at magic like this: a ritual or intentional using of something abstract, such as social media, to transform the user's perspective and or worldview. If you can open your mind to this analogy, you can suppose that current day marketing is built on this premise, but things such as medicine and science are too. They are based in alchemy, after all. Lesson 7: Analog, Digital, Virtual. Now, this comes from a Kabbalistic uh, theology. Something like demons are the shells that you have to smite in order to get to the proper realm of experience, right? So you get a realm of experience, whether that be love, um, you know, like the experience of true love in a relationship and sex being properly aligned versus lust. And you got like greed instead of being resourceful and useful to humanity. Instead, you're in your corner with your money. So this is where this comes from. And this also has to do with the Qualia Quantia thing, placemat, the Qualia Quantia placemat that we put on up for debate earlier in a different lesson, different section. As shells, right? As containers. If you could, imagine that the analog reality, as in real life, is the base human experience, the essence of being human, the essence, the qualia, right? Then overlay the digital on top of the analog reality, and you get a new shell of experience. The digital reality is that of logic, reasoning, and absolute, the extremes. Then you can overlay virtual reality over the digital reality, and then the virtual is the land of emotion, abstraction, and chaos, the individual reality. This is reflected on VR tech and the internet. There's client side and server side, a distinct separation between users, where the digital server side is only being used to translate between the users. This is a way humans figured out how to translate physical separation and movement into the digital to coalesce into the virtual environments that so many people are a part of now, including YouTube, including Twitch, including social media, right? What we see isn't totally the full picture of what's going on underneath in the servers, right? It's just your side of it that it chooses to give you access to, right? Now here's the crux. If you agree with this framing that I've laid down, then let me try to explain the issues with this. The more engrossed we become, the more manipulated we could make ourselves. A vulnerability in the form of hedonistic behaviors. You could call this sin, right? When we try to favor the moment we're in instead of investing in the future, we lose touch with our cycle of time. There's nothing worse than not having something to wake up to. If we choose to drink in our own splendor rather than drinking from each other's glory and successes, we lose community. We lost our support team. Every human being has a right to their own attention and focus, even their own misgivings and die-hard attitudes. But I argue we need each other more than we want to admit. So here's the conclusion. Take what you will from this. I simply want a better world to live in. I don't want us to lose the plot of our own lives. I think the vast majority of humanity feels this way, despite the internet being full of hateful things. Let's try and take a little more responsibility for ourselves and make community and family together. We have a bright future ahead of us, though it may not feel like it sometimes. Be adventurous. So hopefully, with this, you, Mr. Viewer, Mr. or Mrs., I hope this finds you well, and I will see